Welcome back to the Wedding Capture Co podcast, a podcast for photographers and videographers by me, Chris, and my co-host, Tom. Today, we're going to be talking about prices and packaging, a big taboo subject in the UK, pricing. Obviously, people don't like to talk about money in the UK, but we'll be talking about how to price yourself when you start up, when to raise your prices, and then whether you should be offering packages or solo package or an a la carte system and the pros and cons of that. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's get into it.
So yeah, let's just jump right in. We don't need to talk about this. Like, we've caught up. Like, we're in the same clothes as last time. Everyone knows that we record 2 episodes in a day.
We're being consistent.
So
yes.
We are. Yeah, we I think we said all that we said about bringing ourselves up to the current day of your journeys to Manchester, our trips to Florida, and the rest of it. So we've decided that we are back in work mode, and so we're going to jump into a very work-based
into a more
topic.
practical episode. We want to keep this so that it's not just about us, and it's also us giving back a little bit as well. And
I feel like if you're in the industry, it's one of those things which is always on everybody's lips, but no one wants to talk about
pricing.
Yeah.
British people and pricing, honestly, like
it's mad,
it's just the thing, isn't it? Like, don't ask what price I am.
I remember going again, following on from the last episode, being at a conference and a American, maybe Canadian lady standing up to speak on her thing.
Yeah.
And literally open a line with, so who earned $100,000 last year? And everyone looking, and no one put their hand up. And she's like,
really?
Who wants to earn $100,000? I mean, she's like, you guys, you Brits, man. Like, you Brits. It's like, you know, you won't talk about sex, you won't talk about money. It's like prudish people. And it's almost like and it is. Like,
I don't think anyone wants to earn 100,000 here, because the VAT just absolutely crushes you.
But just as a generalisation, though. So more or less, like, if you always taught us as a young person, or I wouldn't walk up to my uncle and go, how much did you make last year?
Yeah.
Get slapped. Like,
you don't ask your parents how much they earn.
It's always that thing. I think I know what my parents earn, or I did earn when I was a kid now.
Yeah.
Like, it's, and I think that is half of the problem. I think is sometimes having very honest conversations around money, pricing, and not even just when you're actually getting down to nitty gritty of like numbers. I think, but even just having that conversation of kind of when to put your prices up, how much to put them up by, the options or the ways that you can price your work.
Yeah.
Like, it's just something which is often not talked about, or not talked about enough. Which when we all work as self-employed people, it's one of the things we're most clueless about.
I think people feel bad as well, saying that they want to earn as much money as possible. I feel like in the wedding industry, it's like, why do you do your job? Because I love my job. Yeah. It's good money. Like, we do earn good money. Like, the hourly rate is crazy compared to other jobs.
I've found that as well, particularly when over the last couple of years, I've started to creep in a little bit more commercial and stuff. And you look at the rates sometimes that you're being looked at, and you think, well, why would I do that?
Just do another wedding and get twice.
Why would you do that? Like, you know, like when I could earn 3, 4, sometimes even 5 times as much.
Yeah.
For the same hours on a Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And have my fun. I'm probably not allowed to drink beer at theirs and you know and have as much fun or much freedom as I do working with a couple as against working with like a client.
I think it's important to be. I think being open about your finances is probably, I mean, I'm not going to go ahead on here and just start spouting about how much.
Online banking,
but I mean, I even said in the last episode what my goal was every year. Yeah. So if you go back and listen to that, you'll know what my goal is of money every year.
Yeah.
And that's just it. And I like it when I go to a wedding and I chat to a photographer and they sit down and go, how much you charge then? I like that, because it's like, open the conversation straight up. You've smashed that ice with a sledgehammer. And now we're open and talking about it and discussing why we charge what we charge. Yeah. And there's been many times where I've gone, oh yeah, I charge this. And the photographer's gone, I need to raise my prices then, because like, I've been doing it like twice as long as you. So,
and I think that's it. It's all of those things, isn't it? Or like you said in the last episode, where you sat there, you know, as a videographer at a wedding, and you found out the photographer that's been booked alongside you, they're probably going to leave before you as well.
Yeah.
And maybe didn't get there as early as you did, is earning
like 3 times
as much.
Yeah.
When you're still capturing the same things in front of you.
It's a good place to be though, because it means you've got some upward mobility. I can't remember where I heard this recently, but if you're working with photographers who are charging a lot more, then you're in that market still.
Yeah, you are. I believe that. Yeah.
Which means you probably should be charging more, because
it kind of goes back to that idea, doesn't it? Is that, you know, that if you're the smartest person in a room, then you're in the wrong room. And I think the only way that you elevate yourself is it comes round with that idea of perception, is that if you were always going to be the most expensive person, then you're hanging around with kind of more lower suppliers, you want to be in that same conversation as the people, like say, above you, so that, because then you enter, you're seen to be with that person, so you're naturally grouped by, oh, that person's expensive, oh, but he did a wedding with them, and it shouldn't be like that, but it definitely is. So I think it's not always a bad thing, but it's keeping an eye on where kind of, with enough eye on where people are to know where you sit in the market, but without letting somebody else's pricing dictate yours.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a market for different areas, and it obviously depends on what kind of weddings you want to film, what kind of suppliers you want to work with, that kind of thing. Like if you want to be, 20 grand and not working with wedding planners, that might be a bit difficult. I don't know. Yeah. But like, you're gonna have to be shooting certain kind of weddings. Like I'd probably never want to be that level. I don't really. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yeah, and I think there's so much more at play. Although this is an episode on pricing, there's so much more at play than literally pounds and pence. Like it's and I think that's probably the worst or the best thing to say. But to begin is that whatever we're gonna say over the course of this episode is purely our attitudes and opinions towards pricing, based on the overheads responsibilities that we have, which is why we've ended up where we are. But also from both of us that have been doing this 10 years now. And if someone asks me about the mistakes that I've made in my industry or in my journey doing photography, is I would say that I spent too long raising my prices by too little.
Yeah, same. Yeah, agreed.
£100 each time.
Yeah.
Where are you going to grow at that?
Yeah.
Well, you look at how much my work changed in those 3 years to how much my bottom line did.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was telling you, I don't know whether it's off camera, but I've got like a spreadsheet of like analytics that I keep for each year. And I've started doing like the average price that I'm booking in. And I'm realizing that because I'm putting them up by such a small amount, the average price is barely changing that I'm booking in for.
Yeah.
Even though like, I've raised my price by a couple of hundred or whatever, because I'm doing packages and things like that. It's like it varies in what package I book every year. And so the average price can sort of only go up by a little bit, even if you're putting your prices up by more than you think you should be, if you know what I mean. So the goal is always to do like a little bit less maybe every year. I don't know what your goal is, to be fair, if I'm talking to you, but it's for me, it's like I want to do less at the same sort of and earn the same amount, really.
Yeah, and it's not taking things to extremes. Like I always have said that, particularly the older I get as well, the earn more and shoot less model is, I think everybody would be lying if they say that that's not what they want. Yeah. But to a degree, like I think that there is a point where I would feel that I wasn't shooting enough, even if I was earning, say, for example, £10,000 a wedding. I think I would still want to shoot more than 8 to 10 weddings a year. Yeah, agreed. For me to feel that I was staying creatively kind of, like my creative muscle were being flexed enough. I was at enough weddings and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. But at the same time, there's no point being at the other end of the market, still plugging away at £1,000, having to do 60 plus weddings a year. Yeah. Because my creative muscle would be pulled straight and on the sofa dead. Yeah. And
there's no room for creativity.
It's finding that balance, isn't it, in somewhere which allows you to live a life, or the money that you earn to give you the opportunity to live a life that you want, and balance that with the amount of weddings that you still feel that you can comfortably do whilst maintaining a good degree of physical and mental health.
Yeah, but like you say, these are our opinions, and I also think because me and you do things in very different ways as well in terms of our pricing structures and things. So I feel like it's a good way of doing it, because then we can sort of offer our own pros and cons and why we do what we do as well.
And I think also I'd like to say that this episode is probably going to come from the best place possible, because I've wrote in my notes is that I feel that most of the biggest changes that I've made in my pricing, or things that I've learned about pricing, have come from making mistakes. Yeah. And that I feel like I've heard a lot of pricing things the hard way. And so that if we can pass those kind of cautionary tales onto you, if you're someone that's maybe near at the start of your business and not knowing whether you're charging enough or charging too much or whatever, if we can offer you something to reassure you that you are doing the right thing, or offering some things maybe not to do, that you will climb that price ladder quicker than maybe we have.
I'll blow it right open as well and say that your price is not how much you value your work. Your price is how much your couples and potential couples value your work. Yes. So if you're if you're a grand and you're still thinking, oh yeah, I'm not quite there to go for 1,500 yet, but you're filming 60 weddings, you're there.
You are, yeah.
Because you're filming 60 weddings.
Yeah.
So you know, you can easily go to 1,500 and you'd still be probably getting enough inquiries to film 60 weddings if you wanted to.
And also the amount of conversations that I hear whenever I speak to people, and they go, oh, I can't charge that yet because my work doesn't look like that person's.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't judge what you charge solely on end product. Whilst we are photographers and videographers and that people are booking us to make them photos and videos, there is so much more at play. You might find someone's a great photographer making great work, but their customer experience and their social media is absolutely non-existent, which is why they're not there. Where if you're someone which is super personable, going to give a couple a great experience, and maybe the photos are getting there, there's still value in that stuff, and customers will see value in that,
and they'll start recommending to their friends. For that.
Yeah, but definitely, and it's a much more bigger picture thing than just literally the deliverables or what you see in someone's highlight reel on their Instagram page. Doesn't dictate whether they're a $5,000 photographer or a $2,000 photographer.
100%. Stop looking at other people's work and being like, yeah, I'm not quite worth that yet. If you are getting more inquiries or you're too busy, then you are worth that. It's really a simple. I
think that was probably one of my worst things, looking around and going, well, I think I probably could put my prices up, but the 3 photographers that live nearest to me that shoot in the venues that I do a lot, they're all like not putting their prices up. So if I put my price up, no one's going to book me because they'll just book that person because they're and it's not true.
No.
I can say, since I did my price increase in 2022, which we'll talk about because that was the biggest price increase I've ever done.
Yeah.
I know that I now sit probably to some of the photographers nearest to me geographically, I am hundreds of pounds more than they are.
Yeah.
Not like 50 quid, like 3, 4, maybe £500 more than they are.
Yeah.
And I'm still mostly booked for this year.
Yeah.
In those venues which are near to me.
And
so it's not.
Would you say that not much has really changed as well since you put that up?
No. Not really.
It's not like, inquiries are dropping off, I've really got to work harder for the booking now.
I would say it's not. If anything, I would say that I'm probably getting those better bookings. And I think that's one of the other biggest myths that I want to kind of blow out there before we go back to the very beginning and kind of start of where we started with our pricing journeys and where we've got, is that if you are on the fence and thinking that you will lose customers if you put your price up, I can almost guarantee that in certain points of that journey, the opposite will happen.
Yeah.
Some people will not book you if you are too cheap, which sounds bonkers.
Very true.
And the first time that someone told me that, I won't tell you what I said to them because I will have to make it an explicit episode.
If they've got a $2,500 budget and you're coming in at 1,500, they won't book you. They'll be like, I could get someone at 2.5. Even if you're the same quality as this person who's charging 2.5, their budget is 2.5. So,
and even more so, once you get to those bigger budget weddings, if somebody's happily going to spend 50 grand on a venue and they're going to spend 5 grand on a cake, you could be the best photographer in the world at 1,500 quid.
Yeah.
And they won't even look at you.
But no, exactly. Because it's
like, I've heard stories on podcasts and speaking to other photographers, particularly ones that are starting to broach that luxury market now, where they have been told by planners, you need to significantly raise your prices for you to be even considered by my clients.
Yeah.
And that's people charging more than we are.
I've put illusion of luxury. Sometimes a higher price makes you seem more desirable to a couple.
And also, I mean, it can also, people can look at your work, and if you don't value it, if you're only valuing your work at 1,500 quid, how are you expecting anybody else to value it more than that?
Yeah.
A lot of people will, if they see something and think it's too good to be true, could pass on by and go, why does that work look like really expensive work, but they're only charging 1,500 quid?
Yeah.
What's the first thing you'll say is, what's the catch? And some people won't even inquire with you to find out what the catch is. They'll just walk on by and find the person who's probably might not even be as good as you, but charges 500 quid more.
Yeah, exactly. So where to begin then? So what we want to do is like talk about, if you're listening to this and you're sort of early stages, where or how we think that you should be approaching going into your pricing. So we're going to talk about, maybe how to work out what price to go in at, and like whether you should, there's plenty of ways to present your price in like packages or just doing one package, or there's like a la carte, which is more popular in America, but it's sort of coming over where you allow your couples to pick certain parts of it. And I think starting off then, for me, I'm not the one to ask about price. I started off pretty low back in my day, but that was mainly due to the situation I was in, because doing any kind of wedding was better than the situation I was in.
Yeah.
And that was, I was working 9 to 5 at Debenhams, earning £50 a day. Yeah. And like, any, like, I was working out how many weddings I would have to do to get full time, and it wasn't many, to be fair. Do you know what I mean? So I came in quite a low price, but I do think that it's actually more beneficial if you've already got a job to come in at a higher price than you might think, and allow people to book you at that price and probably market a bit more. Does that make sense?
I do. So, and if anything, I think some people's goal is to go full time too quickly.
And that was my issue. I wanted to go full time, and that was my only goal.
And some people think that badge of kind of, I've made it, is the fact that I'm full time. And I know some people now, and probably people that you look at them and think, well, they're really busy with weddings. And then you find out that they've still got a really healthy day job, which there's obviously a transition from that. If you're shooting a large volume of weddings as well as working in the day, there's a workload issue there. But at the same time, the transition then, you can afford, say, to hold out for that little bit of a higher price or make sure your business is much more established.
You can take more risks
because you're being supported in your day job. Like I say, it's easier to get a job once you've got a job, right?
Exactly, yeah. But I would say, because I was at Debenhams and I wasn't earning that much anyway, if I kind of didn't do that, I wouldn't have been able to get very far in life earning 50 quid a day. So I kind of had to go straight in. But if you've got a job and you're already in like the 30,000s or whatever, and you're secure enough that if you start this business, it doesn't get as many bookings as you want for next year, that you're still going to be okay for your mortgage and that, you're going to be much more likely to be able to take risks, spend some money on marketing, and make people believe you're worth coming in at 1,500, even though you've only been doing it for a year or whatever.
I think that, like, reasonably talking, that I know, like, when I came in, or I shot my first wedding in 2009, went full time in 2015. That back then, like 1,500 was like the all right. Yeah, like people said then, you can't charge less than 800 quid or £1,000 and be making money. And I think that even now, where we are that many years on, that £1,500 is the minimum now. Like before, with me, it was like, I remember charging £1,000 for, the first time that I charged £1,000 for a wedding and thought I'd won the frigging lottery.
I know. Yeah, same. Yeah.
But now I think if you're coming in, even to get to a point where it's even viable as a business, for the amount of weddings you'd be able to shoot in a year, plus do whatever you need and the costs associated with gear and insurance and the rest of it, I would say that probably somewhere around £1,500 is probably the minimum that you could
these days
in order to make an actual go at it.
Yeah, and obviously, like the first couple, you're going to want to do less than that.
Yeah.
But when you start pricing yourself and saying, what am I going to book in for next year? Then, like you say, like if you want a decent like camera for the year, maybe a B camera, or some lenses for each of those and stuff like that, you're going to have to be thinking about going in
marketing
1,500
budget,
unless you've already got a job that pays, again, unless you've already got a job with disposable income that you can pay that for, then you can maybe afford to do something different. But I know it also comes down to this is probably a different topic entirely, but like second shooting as well. If you've done a year of second shooting already, then you're already more experienced than a lot of people that are coming in brand new. Or if you're a photographer and you're thinking about going into video, you're already a lot more experienced in a lot of those things. So you can come in a bit higher than someone who's just.
And you've still been to those weddings.
Yeah.
I think that's that whole kind of Japanese art of 10,000 hours, isn't it? Whether they're weddings that you've booked or weddings that you've worked on, you've still been at those weddings. And I think that's a lot of it, is in terms of just being experienced as to, against things that happen on the day and knowing how to deal with them.
Yeah.
You've still been there and you've still kind of done those things, so you can fully take that experience. And also it depends who you second shoot with as well. If you've been second shooting consistently at high-end weddings,
then you're already halfway there,
and you're allowed to use the images for your portfolio. Just because you're inexperienced, if the portfolio you've got reflects higher value weddings, you've got to charge that for it to match up.
I always get surprised. I see second shooters quite a lot who are primarily second shooters, and they're like, I'm second shooting like 50 weddings a year or whatever, and I'm like, mate, you could be earning so much more if you just like first, because you've got all of that content that you're allowed to use probably after a while, put it on your Instagram, and like you've got all of that content that you could use to promote yourself, and you're still second shooting. Like you could easily first shoot, do half the amount of work, have a life, and like I see them that years later and they're still second shooting, and it's like I get frustrated. I know not everyone wants to do this,
but though at the same time, knowing on second shooter rates, you would struggle to be a full-time second shooter.
Definitely.
Earning approximately anywhere between £200 to £300 a weekend, or for a day. You've got to do a lot of those jobs to even make rent and eat, and as well as still having depreciation on your gear.
When you consider that, like, we would probably have to second shoot like 8 to 10 jobs to make what we make to do it for actually first shooting a wedding. It's no brainer, right?
Yeah.
And so, but second shooting when you start off can be great to get that knowledge so that you can come in at a high price straight away. That's one thing that I didn't do and I do regret not doing is second shooting.
I never second shot my first wedding until the year before the pandemic.
Really?
So it was 2009. I shot my first wedding a decade ago by the time I second shot somebody.
Wow, that's great. I think mine was last year or maybe the year before. And that's the thing, like, I feel like I would have learned so much more and accelerated my experience so much more if I'd have just reached out to some people and, asked if I could second shoot for them and whatever, because, you get that content, it accelerates your knowledge, your experience, and you come in a bit higher.
And allows you to have this, if you're entering the industry and you don't have many peers, and short of going on lots of other photographers' websites to seeing what they're charging, to even have an idea, to be sat at dinner with that photographer or the videographer that's there and be part of that conversation and listening to kind of the mechanics of it, I think you learn in those instances as well. So I think to kind of wrap that point up of where you begin, I think in really, really simple terms, is if you've got a full-time job and your life is adjusted to that way of living, I think what you're earning in your day job has got to be your goal, because you don't want to jump and be poorer, do you? So even if you look at roughly what you're earning in your day job, divide that by the amount of weddings that you think that you can do. That gives you a base price, doesn't it, of where roughly you need to be. And then it's just a goal of filling that 20, 25 weddings in the first instance next year. And to have that point where you know that you can transition from working full-time into being full-time in this with no drop in income. No, I mean, that's a perfect way of thinking about it. How much you need to earn, how much you earn now, how many weddings you're happy to do, work out from there. That's really good. And that's probably, as an actual kind of really basic starting point, I think that's probably the best place to be. But if you were like us, coming from minimum wage jobs, not long out of university, again, whatever we were earning was a step up. It didn't take long before that transition was there. Was it?
Yeah, exactly. And if you've already got contacts in the industry, use them as well. I heard a podcast recently about someone who already had contacts in the industry, straight away went to a load of high-end weddings, second shot, got all the stuff, straight up in the price bracket because they're already
conversations there. I'm sure, like if you look at people like and I can't speak for them because I don't know them, but we were talking about the Lawsons. Like they obviously came from being photographers to being videographers. If I decided over the next couple of years, I'm not, by the way, of becoming a videographer, I wouldn't go back to the bottom of the pile again and start charging, $1,000 or $1,500 to be a videographer. I would like to make a smooth transition across from where I am, using the portfolio that I've got and my experience I've got at weddings to at least be the same money that I am as a photographer, if not more. So it's not just, it's that bigger picture stuff, isn't it, as well? Like, and the wedding industry is a funny world and people fall into it from all sorts of ways. But a lot of people do come from within the industry.
Yeah, they do.
Go into it that way. So it's perfectly reasonable. Like you still, even if whether you were the caterer at a wedding or you were whatever, you've still been around that world.
So you have some sort of experience.
That network and experience to your advantage.
Yeah. So then there's the issue of like, how do you present your pricing? And we've spoken about how we both started. Well, we've put down how we both started, and we both started with the same packages.
I went with like the classic, like
bronze, silver, gold, and I did that as well. Yeah,
and I think probably anybody who started at a certain time, that's just the way to that kind of 3 tiers of what it is, and then. I'm sure we're going to get into it in a minute. That way is that there's ways that you can tactically price it depending on which one you want people to book and stuff like that. And I kind of went with, that bronze being, maybe some shorter hours, the middle one being the one that I wanted people to book, which was kind of the prep to dance. And then the gold one being the one that nobody will book because it comes with like an album and parent albums.
It's a bonus if someone books it.
And the absolute kitchen sink as well.
Yeah. I think that's still a viable option. I still use 3 tiers now, although they're called something different because I was like, does anyone really want to book something bronze like at this price?
I don't think anybody actually cares what they're called.
No.
As long as it isn't.
But I do.
As long as it isn't gold, silver or bronze. Because you don't want that level of, you don't want to put that level of hierarchy on it. Because if somebody only books the bottom one, you're making them actively feel like they're only third best in your opinion. Where as long as you could literally name them like Steve, Dave and Bob. And so someone goes, oh, I'll have a Steve.
I've seen some funny names too.
And it's whatever. It can be whatever you want to be. I know people that name theirs after like characters from movies or their favourite thing, or they name them after their cats or whatever. It's just that idea of you are making a selection in that sense, where if you hierarchy it towards kind of that bronze, silver, gold, you're naturally setting that expectation of that. Some people go, oh, well, I can't afford a gold package.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people are like, oh, I don't want to be third best and be a bronze.
Yeah.
So you're kind of almost, you're adding an unnecessary stigma to
block
it.
There, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my packages are platinum and diamond, and then my lowest package is called the Cine package, just because I just decided one day that I was going to brand a 6 to 8 minute film a Cine film and call it that. And now my clients actually call it that. Oh, really looking forward to getting our Cine film. Like I've just branded the 6 to 8 minute film and gone like, this is the sort of least I want to earn at a wedding.
There's some levels to that. I don't know a lot about filmmaking, but if you used to use the old Cine cameras, a roll of reel was about 8 minutes, wasn't it?
I didn't.
I think it was. I believe it was. If you used to use I'm not that old, but like if you have like a Cine reel camera, I'm pretty sure that each reel of film is somewhere about.
Well, there you go. I can say that's what I call it.
I'm pretty sure that they are about 8 minutes of footage. Yeah.
It was before people were doing really, really short films. I think in America they started doing loads of 6 minute films, and I was like, do you know what? I want to start I want to do a 6 minute film and call it a day, and that's. And I reckon I can make that be my lowest package. That's like the lowest I want to do a wedding for.
Yeah.
And that comes in. And I'm quite happy to do it because on the day, I don't have to work as hard because it's a 6 minute film.
Yeah.
I have to work hard, obviously, it's a wedding, but I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not going to fill this up or whatever. I literally turn up, do things so naturally, and it's like, and that package for me, I'm still really happy to do, even though it's my lowest.
And I do find sometimes, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but a lot of times from what I've seen like with your pricing in terms of a lot of your price is determined by deliverables, where mine is determined by hours.
Yeah.
So for me to do like my lesser package, that wouldn't be me being there all day. That would be say like ceremony till speeches or prep till dinner or something. Yeah. Where you're still spending that time on the day being there, you just deliver a shorter edit primarily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because most of the work happens in the edit, whereas obviously, if you work an extra hour, you've got to factor in the hour and then the culling of those photos in the hour or whatever, which is still time. But if I'm working, if I'm doing an extra 5 minutes of a film, that's sometimes an extra like half day or something. Yes. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking about that. And that's why I don't know whether it's for video, but between me and you, that's why it's about the deliverables.
I think that's the primary difference. So many times we've spoken on the pod about where, in kind of the most kind of brutal and blunt form, like a photographer's work is done much more on the day, where a videographer's work is done much more in the editing room. Yeah. So for you, let's say the difference between a 6 minute film and a 15 minute film is quite a lot of considerable hours after the day, where for me it'd be, well, if I make lots more photos on that day, I've got more to deliver, but that doesn't really matter because editing time is negligible against the hours that you spend on the day.
Yeah, definitely. So if we go into so I use multiple packages. So I wanted to go into why I do that, and I think you've covered it briefly. Is that for me, it's always been about target people towards the middle package. That's what I would love to book, all of basically, if I could probably. But I've got a package which is a little bit lower, which I can sort of experiment with and things like that. And that comes in at the lowest I'm willing to do. But also I've at some point last year, I lowered my lowest package to a 3 minute film or something, and people are still booking it. Yeah. But then I realized after making a couple of them that I was like, you know what, I'm doing a whole wedding. I'm making 3 minutes from this. It's almost not worth it. Yeah. So I raised it back up, but I realized that I could get away with it. If you know what I mean, people were still happy to book because they wanted video and they wanted someone there to film it.
But I guess in terms of, again, when you're building this pricing structure, is that because that is still a day out of your calendar, you need to know that in the worst scenario, if all you book that year is that short package, you can still survive and be okay on 30 of those rather than 30 of the middle tops.
Yeah, and just how much you enjoy it as well, because that is a package with just me on my own. That's the only one with just me on my own and not a second shooter. But because it's such a such a shorter film, I'm not worrying about, oh man, I've not got enough candids, or I've not done this, because generally there's enough time to do a 6 minute film. So So yeah, so that's one of the reasons, is because I've got the middle one, which I want people to book. I've got the lowest one, which is like the least I'm willing to do, but I can also kind of push that as low as I want to as well. If I really want, don't want people to book it, I'll maybe change it to a 3-minute or something. I'll push people up. And then you've got the highest one, which is, like you say, kitchen sink. Like it's there if people want to book it. I recently raised my prices by a couple of £100, and like instantly someone booked that higher one, and I was like, well, okay, I need to go again.
I need to go again. But I think it's almost real. It's almost reasonable to have that golden package as I don't think anybody will pay that, but let's see what happens. And you can almost use that top package as a navigator of where to grow in future, or gauge people's perception of your worth. If they look at your work and go, oh yeah, that guy's worth that all day long, we can afford that. Look, this work is worth that, and they're booking that top package once maybe, or let alone too often in a year. Then it's definitely time to move on up.
100%. This particular couple were like, contacted me, like, I'm not really sure we've got the budget for a videographer, and but we'll chat to you anyway. After chatting, they booked my highest package, which I just raised, and I was like, what? If these people are willing to book that,
from not even wanting someone, they found that level for your top package.
And so that's why I quite like packages. It gives the couple a bit of flexibility, in that you're not being like, this is what I'm giving you, and that's basically it. Which for video I think is more important, because for photo I don't think there's as many differentiations.
I think that's what we deliver, is you have much more kind of leverage in kind of add-ons in the booking phase, where I feel that photographers have a lot more scope on the other end in terms of print sales, album sales, and things like that. So some people do end trying to promise a certain amount of kind of physical deliverables, almost pre-book print sales and stuff, as a way to expand value onto. And I think that is a really good way, especially when you're starting out, is that if you've got someone that's kind of not sure about kind of value, but you want to raise your perception, is if you add something like an album to your package, that album might only cost you £80, but if it means if you can add £150 to your package, it kind of is raising your perceived worth, because that they couldn't go and buy that album for less elsewhere, but it doesn't physically cost you that much. So that's quite kind of a good way. If you want to kind of test the water with raising your prices, you can kind of slot those things in, or like you could do something where you go, oh well, my new price is this, but for the first 5 bookings you get a free drone, because it's that kind of thing, isn't it? That you can use as, it doesn't physically cost you any money once you've bought the drone to put it in the air at their wedding, but they're seeming that they're getting this extra thing of value as a way to push it up.
100%. You can use there's a lot of things you can leverage to push it up, or change if you like I just said, like if you really didn't want people to lower package, make it undesirable.
Make it to the point where it's the margin between the bottom and the middle is so small that it would almost be silly to book that one. So
generally, if you're targeting people towards the middle package, you want the low one to be so say the low one is £2,000, then you want like something like 2,200 for the middle one, and then like 2,800 for the top. I think the big leap between the middle and the top is the one that drives people to the middle. That's the psychology of it. I don't really necessarily.
And you'll always get some people. It depends on some people are. Some people will book the top one because they like the idea of, I want the best of everything. It's my wedding day. I want the best.
Exactly.
So if I'm not having the top, I'm settling for second best. And then you'll get some people that go, we just want to film.
We just want a videographer.
Whether it's 3 minutes or it's 10 minutes, like we want the film.
We just want
that's
some
our
memories.
budget. We can afford that. But then most people will go, well, if I'm paying £2,000, why would I not just pay the extra couple of £100 to have an extra videographer and a longer film? It's a no-brainer, and that's the psychology, isn't it, of pushing you in.
But I've hinted to it already, but I'm quite flexible in what I offer and the pricing, in that, flexible in pricing is probably the wrong word, because I'm not flexible in pricing at all. But as in, like, I'll probably go in once a month and alter something, like, I might, instead of doing a 1-minute trailer, I'll do like a 2-minute film for that one, or instead of delivering that extra, or that, like, instead of doing drone footage for all of them, I'll just do drone footage for that one. And like, with packages,
experimental rather than
I'm really experimental, and like some people might say, oh, that's bad for your brand image and whatever, because people expect a certain thing. Once people booked in, they're not looking at your packages anymore.
No, they're not.
Like, that's it.
And they're looking at your Instagram to see what they're going to get, or they're looking at other stuff, but they're probably not going back to that pricing page too much. And so I very much, I'd say not every month, but I'd say every few months I'll go in and I'll change the film length just a little bit, like maybe add some to one or lower some to the other, maybe change the prices a little bit. And I think that
that flexibility takes away that whole like nervousness of putting your price up or changing your packages. If you do it enough, then it just becomes something that
and
you
it's always,
fine-tune.
I think that's it. That if you leave them for ages and you've got to blow the cobweb off your pricing pages before you change it, it feels like such a bigger task or a much more scary task of doing.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think if you're constantly in there, kind of, it's like you're almost used to like it, and kind of you desensitize changing those packages to yourself. It doesn't feel like such a daunting task until I think you get to that point where you need to maybe do like a significant raise. And I believe, and I know how terrified I felt when I did mine, that you should feel scared.
You should.
Again, like pricing is one of those things. It is an uncomfortable subject, but the price that you raise it to, especially when you get to a certain point, should make you feel uncomfortable. I think it should. So the point that when someone does book though, and I knew in my mind
relief when someone
that
books
all
it.
I had to have is one person book. I didn't believe that anybody would pay it until one person did. And once the first person did, I knew that I'd be fine. And I also knew that once someone had paid it, I couldn't put it down again. But I have that in my mind. If somebody has paid, if someone is willing to pay that for that, then I can't put it back down to do that because that's not fair to the people that paid more. And so that kind of, you stick with that. And I think it's in so much of it is psychological, especially when it is your job, is that if you raise it and no one books, you're going back to Debenhams for another 5. Or that's how you feel in your mind.
I had nightmares about that back in the day. When I went full time, I had nightmares about going back to my workplace and my business failing and everyone laughing at me.
But I think it's that drive that keeps you hungry, isn't it? And it keeps you moving on. But I think it almost like it should make you feel, and if you're only putting it up by such small amounts that you're like, oh, that's fine, it's fine, then you're probably not putting it up by enough.
True. I'm guilty of that sometimes. Put it up by a small
And I feel
amount.
that's why my growth crawled at the beginning. I was like, inflation rise, or £100, or new year.
Until someone said to you, put it up.
So I did that. So I think probably when I started 2015, I was probably there somewhere around probably like the £1,200 to £1,400 mark, and probably every year only put it up by maybe £100. So I got to the point where in 2022, most of my weddings, or the weddings that I went into 2022 booked at, I think were probably at between 1,500 and 1,650. Because again, like odd 50 quid, I think that's rubbish as well, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
50 quid.
And I literally put it up to 1,750 for the rest, to book the rest of that year. Went to the course day with Sam, and I think this is something that I've put in, which is kind of leads on to the education thing from last episode, is that he kind of looked over our websites, this and that, and he was like, I've written too cheap here 3 times, so I think you should put your price up. And I was like, I won't get it. I won't get it where I am. Everybody else in my area, no one's north of £2,000, this and that. And he was like, okay, let's do an exercise. So the other people in the room, he pulled my website up on the screen. And said, we're not going to look at the pricing page for a minute. We're going to look through all the other pages first. And sat there with people that I didn't really know because I only met them like 2 hours ago. And they were like, look at the work. Look at this. And he was like, what do you think that work's worth? And someone was like, oh, he's probably about $3,000. And someone else was like, yeah, I was going to say he's probably like 2.5. And literally, I had to scoop my chin off the floor. Because there's people I didn't know. And that's the same as clients going on your site. We're like, yeah, he's this, he's that. And then it's like, let's have a look at the price. See how much Tom's going to cost you. And you click on the pricing page, full day package, $1,750. And which I was a little bit,
and he shamed you in front of everyone. Like,
I was like, I think if you're less than that, then you're doing yourself short. And I almost dared him to be wrong. I was like, I won't get it where I am. And he was like, but you're on the south coast in a fairly affluent area, shooting good numbers of weddings. Like, you're telling me now that you're almost booked for this year. So if you put your price up by a significant amount, you're still going to be okay this year. And you could book most of next year at your old price if you had to put it back down. So I came home and I changed it to 2,500. So I went from 1,750 to 2.5.
Jesus.
It's an £850 rise, isn't it? £750 rise.
£750.
And
I've never done that
between
before.
when I started and where I was at that point, my price hadn't changed by £750 a wedding. It took me less than a month to take my first booking at that money.
Did it? That's insane.
And I got to the point by the end of that year, I walked into 2023.
These are the stories I think that people need, because
I walked into that next year with over 20 weddings, 20 or 24 weddings at $2,500. Booked.
Like I said, people need to hear this.
I'm not saying that you can take those huge leaps every time. I'm at the point now where I'm at 2,700, which I'm still battling with, which we're going to talk about unround numbers in a minute.
Yeah.
That's just me not being brave enough to go to 3.
Yeah. And I think, like, again, we've touched on it, but like there are some grey areas as well.
Yeah.
Like I believe that 1,700 to £2,000 is a grey area.
I believe that. I think, and also in terms of value, that is people. I'm going to make wild generalizations now. And remember that if you'll listen to this wildly into the future, that it'll make a difference. But here we are, sat at the beginning of 2024.
Yeah.
That I think anything at 1,500 or less, that is your absolute newbie beginner rate now.
Yeah.
If you've been in even 2-3 years, have a good amount of weddings under your belt, that there's no reason that you shouldn't be looking at pushing towards the £2,000 mark.
Well, I think if you're about 1,800 and you're doing it right, then I think you would get the same at just £2,000, just a flat £2,000.
And even that extra £200 over 20 weddings.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
very good at maths. Enough that you could afford to do 2 weddings less the next year, right?
Yes, but we talk about that grey area quite a lot, and like we were talking about before we started recording.
I call it a black hole. I'm not even to kind of say it's a grey area. I've at the coactive or even that I've had conversations with people going, oh, I wanted to go up from 15 and this and that, and I think at that point just take the leap over it, because it is a black hole. I think you will just fall in that you could easily jump over that bit in the middle.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to what you do, which is
so after the 3 packages, I got to the point where, like I said at the beginning, I learnt most of my pricing things from mistakes, and I got to a year probably early on where I had more people booking me for my bronze package on Saturdays than I wanted, and then I was having to turn down full day bookings for those dates because I was only booked out for a half day or whatever. So I made a decision that the 3 packages were going to go, and I was going to condense it all the way back to only working in the full day, and offering 1 package. Because that way then I was like, there's no way that I can be booked out, for 4 hours on a Saturday and then lose out on that. So that was the only package that I offered. And then to caveat that, I had a 1 package, but I offered a discount of 10% on that package if you booked it Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
So that I could still scoop up some of those midweek bookings that weren't looking to pay the full rate. Then that big lovely thing called COVID came along, and full day weddings were no longer an option at all. Yeah. They weren't, we couldn't do them. So I had to, at that point, pivot my pricing to a point that there was opportunities for me to take on some of those small weddings and the rest of it. And I actually found that I really enjoyed some of those micro weddings, smaller weddings. And so coming out the other side of COVID, I now have kind of kept to 2 packages. I have a full day, which can be booked midweek or weekend, or a smaller option, which is based around either a 2-hour package and a 4-hour package, but you can only book that Monday to Thursday. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, and I know for me now that yes, there is still an opportunity that I could book out a random Thursday in August for 4 hours and then someone could come along for the full day. But to the best of my knowledge, that most of the people won't do that. Yeah. So that's kind of how I work now.
So what are the benefits that you've found that over a package system or?
I find that it kind of gives me what I want. Yeah. And I know obviously that we have to kind of cater to our clients' needs, but at the same time, I know that if the worst happened, I couldn't live comfortably on 30 lots of 4-hour bookings or 2-hour bookings. Yeah. So, but at the same time, I'm fully aware that I would be snubbing some of those really lovely small registry office, then dinner afterwards, even small scale elopements, stuff like that in the midweek, if I didn't offer it at all. Yeah. So that for me offers me that flexibility. That I know that if I'm going to spend time at a wedding on a weekend, that I'm getting maximum buck for that. Yeah. And then obviously that I do still and probably do a handful of small scale weddings.
See, I'm not sure whether this is my stubbornness, but I've always tried to avoid doing anything less than a full day. So I don't really offer any half day or ceremony only or anything. It's literally just the packages, and that's what you get.
I think for video though, and again, I don't want to sound disrespectful towards video, is that, and I am being general, a lot of those small weddings that I probably do on a Tuesday afternoon or whatever don't have the biggest budgets. They maybe do just go to the registry office and then go to a small dinner or have some portraits afterwards and do whatever. So I'm not sure that even if you were doing those weddings, there would be, especially for the pricing point that you're at now for your full day, what you would have to charge for that half day. I'm not sure that you would be inundated with bookings for it because the budgets for those weddings are less. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like I've had some that book me for 2 hours and they still go, well, you're the top end of what we want. But because we are having such a small scaled back wedding, we want really lovely photos to remember it by, to show to the people that aren't coming because it's so small.
Yeah.
And that's why they've had that.
It's much more of a case of, I just want a few photos for the day, and they're not going to go and get a photo team and a video team and that, because they're already.
Some of it still comes back to the point that in kind of wedding land, I believe that most people will book a photographer as a necessity, where people will book a videographer as a luxury or a nice to have, not that we have to have a video.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And you can sort of customize what you do with add-ons as well, right?
So I still have add-ons.
Yeah.
So again, because I'm someone that prefers to work alone, I don't have a second shooter add-on. Most of the other photographers that I know have, rather than have a package that has to have 2 shooters in it, they price that for themselves, then just have a second shooter as an add-on.
Yeah.
Or so I have my full day, I deliver my online gallery with that, and then my little box of prints on the side. But if you want to add an album, that is an add-on. If you want to add express editing, that's an add-on. If you want to add an engagement shoot, it's an add-on. So that it's always things that people are very much, they still feel they have control, because I know other photographers, again, that always want to include an engagement shoot as a way to add value to a package. But if you get a couple that don't want an engagement shoot, and then you start to get that little bit of if you don't want the engagement shoot, can you just knock some money off? Because we're not. They try and pick your package apart. Do you know what I mean? Where if you kind of leave it as the bare bones of the deliverables for the day only, everything else around that then you can then use as an add-on.
Yeah, and over the years, I've had add-ons as well, and taken stuff away and put it into the package and things. Like I've had drone footage as an add-on because I don't necessarily think that's needed. But like I was saying to you, I think before we started recording, that when it comes to the price point that I want to be at, I feel like drones should be included in that and should be a part of, and I think, again, the whole experience.
That flexibility for you, doesn't it? Because drone's an awkward one. Because if someone paid you to put your drone in the air, and then the weather was bad and you couldn't, do you think that person then turn around and go, well, we paid you £300 extra to put the drone up? You didn't put the drone up, have money back.
Well, yeah, they do.
Well, at least now, if you just go, it's included,
it
elevates the packages that you do fly the drone for, because you need that cool venue shot.
Yeah.
Or if they're at a venue where you can't fly or the weather is bad,
there's nothing you can do.
There's no comeback for that.
Yeah, that is generally it as well. Like there's a lot of venues can't fly at. So I just think for me as well, like I want to be doing it. It's like you said for your one package, like I want to be doing drone, to be including that in my footage and potentially like raising the perceived value of that video by putting a couple, even if it's just a couple of venue shots. I think that drone does raise the perceived value, even whether some people think it's a fad or not. It's a cool shot, and that's it. So I'm going to be using it. And then there's things like keepsake edit as well, so that will go on as an extra. I used to offer an additional videographer for the package with only one person in case they wanted, like, I don't know, bride and groom prep 2 separate locations in the morning and there's only me on my own. Then I'll be like, okay, well, you can add a videographer to our lowest package. So you can, so extras as well. If you're thinking, you want to just do one package, offer the bare bones of what you want to do, and then add things on. And even for me, with my package system, I use my extras as a way to, so my keepsake edit is added to my highest package, because I'm like, but if you go for the highest package, and I sold this to a couple recently who were having singing waiters, and every couple that I've had in 2023 who had singing waiters come back and ask for the uncut footage afterwards, and every couple I managed to sell them a keepsake. So this couple says to me, we're going to have singing waiters at our wedding. And I said, and after at the end they were like, so what package do you recommend? And I was like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not trying to sell you the highest package, but every single couple who's had singing waiters has said to me, I want keepsake. The cheapest way for you to get keepsake is to go for our highest package.
Because if you buy the middle one, by the time you add that on, you're most of the way to the gold anyway.
Well, you're paying more.
And the other little bits that you get in there as a kind of
the extra film,
a bonus, it's worth it.
Yeah. So you can, if you're doing a package system, you can use the extras as a way to bargain. If you're not, you can use the extras as a way to increase what you're earning from your base level package. Right?
And sometimes you can make them conditionally as well. Like I know some people that say, this is my full day rate, it's this much money. But if you have over 100 guests at your wedding, I insist that you have a second shooter, just so we can get enough through it. So it's not saying that it's not the couple's opportunity to cheap out and they go, it'll be all right. You go in, I need, if there are this many people, I need a second shooter. So more or less, if you're having a wedding of this number for that long, you automatically fall into that bracket. Or even some people that always price by the hour.
Yeah,
They have a minimum of 2 hours, and then say they'll price by the hour after that, and even to the point they go, and then kind of offer almost like a kind of stamp card system that if you book 6 hours, you get a free album, or if you book 8 hours, you get the free USB at the end. So kind of build it up, and it's just knowing what works for you. Like you've said, you would feel anything to work in anything less than the full day seems counterproductive. Where for me, I don't like walking away at dinner because I'm selfish. I want to stay for the whole day because I feel like there's stuff to be captured. But I also know from someone that had a really small, short wedding themselves that those days are perfectly lovely, and I would like to be part of some of those ones that are just ceremony and dinner and really near my house. By offering that kind of micro package, I at least feel that I've met them a degree of the way. That there are still some couples which want to have that really small wedding, but on a Saturday, and I just can't, from a business point of view, I just can't
justify it. Yeah. And I think, it's nice that you get to do that as well. I feel like it's quite a nice job for you, like because a lot of your weddings are local as well, right? So you're going like down the road, you're filming, photographing for half a day, come back, can probably do the edit in the same day, and it's
exactly
like
that, and it's seeing that for what it is. I got married at our local registry office, so to go back there and do weddings, I think is always feel you kind of see a bit of yourself in it. Again, the edits are normally pretty quick because you aren't there for that long, and to do it in a weekday, to kind of go home, be back normal time. Like, kind of in the same working hours that my wife works, and still earn some money for that day, still made a positive impression on their guests that they might book you for their full day and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that by doing that shows you that work is out there and probably still equates to some of my income every year, which I would lose if I was hard and fast of, no, I only have one package, it has to be this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not offering loads of stuff where it becomes super confusing to me as to, what package am I doing today?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, so that is a disadvantage of doing packages as well, is that like sometimes you do have to check like, what am I doing now? How many people have I got? And then work out sort of like with our 2-person packages, like who's going to do the second shooting. Like mostly it's Kate, but sometimes it has to be someone else if Kate's not available. And so we do have to be a bit more flexible with that. But then there's the a la carte pricing.
See, and that for me like leads into straight to that. Like I understand the option of it, but for me it'd be so confusing. I would literally be there scrutinising the job sheet. But in the week that's when going, what am I actually delivering? Where am I? Like, how long am I actually there? And you need to. I think the good thing of packages is that it kind of explains to people who don't really know what they want. It gives them a guide of what you can offer. Where if you kind of come to an a la carte and kind of go, but you can pick this and pick that and pick this and pick that. A lot of people don't know whether. If you said to someone, "Do you want your first dance photographed?" They go, "I'm not really that bothered." Yeah. But then when you go, "Well, fine, then I'm going to leave just before dinner." They're like, "Oh no, we want you there for the evening."
Yeah.
And it's so kind of like they expect it to be all day, where almost you can give people too much choice. Do you know what I mean?
So a la carte is more popular in America, but it's there's a few people that do it in the UK, but it's more like you pick certain parts you want. Like it's like everything's an extra.
Literally. There's no such thing as like a core. Like everything is an add-on.
So what length trailer do you want? What length film do you want? How many videographers do you want? Ceremony do you want? Speeches? And they pick everything and add that on. And like you say, like I think from a couple perspective, it can seem like, oh, great, I've got lots of customization options. But I do think, and I know there's high-end videographers that do this in America because I listen to a podcast where they do it or have done it. But I think that for my business, I want it to be as simple as possible. And my 3 packages already like, okay, there's 3 different types of weddings that I've got to do. Having then for me, I would be giving the couple too much of a say over my job, basically. I'll be turning up to work and doing a different thing every day. And being someone who's trying to simplify my life at the moment, I want to be doing the weddings that I want to be doing, the jobs that I want to be doing. Yes, I'm including the ceremony and speeches in every package, but at least I know that, and I'm just rocking up and doing it.
And that's it. And I know to a degree that if I go to a wedding on either a Friday, Saturday or Sunday, that I'm going to be there 3 hours before and I'm going to be there to an hour after it, and I'll deliver everything in between. There's no kind of, do I need to bring my drone today? Or do I need to do this? Or can I factor in that? I know where I'm at with it. And something which has literally only just popped into my head, that when you were saying about the a la carte option, and you've seen that in high-end American videographers, the curveball, I guess, to that is, are they picking? Or are most of those people working with planners? But I think that a la carte works great if you know what you want.
Yeah.
if you're looking to be guided and educated, which most couples hope, generally, most of your couples haven't been married before, or don't have loads of expertise over wedding, which is why when you have that call, you explain to them how long you're there, why you're there that long, and the rest of it. And the amount of people that go, I was not even thought of that. I was on a client call the other day with a couple for a November wedding and it's on a Thursday, so they were saying, we think probably budget will only get us to the 4 hours. And I was like, well, in some ways it's fine, because your golden hour shoot will be the shoot before dinner anyway, because of the time it gets dark. And then if you're not having loads of stuff going on in the evening, then it's maybe not needed. If you're not worried about prep, that 4 hour slot for me. And then I've not even thought about that.
Yeah.
And it's almost where with the a la carte, they could have just gone, don't want that. Or even worse, they could have added me to stay to the end.
Yeah.
When it's probably really not needed.
Not worth it, yeah. But you could end up, when you, like you say about them like picking and choosing what they want, for a start, you're the expert, right? So packages or a package gives you authority in the industry. I'm offering this because I believe that it is the best thing and it showcases my work the best. If you start giving people the option to take stuff away, they don't know like half the time what they want. So you could end up booking something which is much lower than you'd want to book. And like you say, so for some reason while you were talking, indoor skydiving popped into my head, right? Okay. If you hadn't done indoor skydiving before and you turned up and they went, how many minutes do you want?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a clue what would be the benefits or disadvantages of each. But I think those sort of things, they have packages like 1 to 3 minutes and then like two to three goes of it sort of thing. Because you've never done it before, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah. And do you know what I mean? And like food packages, when you like book like events and things like that, it's like normally they're in packages or like per person things.
Or even
for a reason.
Holiday, when you go for like all inclusive, they go like, this is the general package that most people have, and you know that you've got to pay up to get the branded alcohol. Yeah. Or if you want to go cheap and just get breakfast, it's that. But it's that kind of thing, isn't it?
They're not saying how many drinks do you want for the week. And you're like,
I don't know. You're trying to do the maths in your head on the spot. It's that thing where I think where the a la carte would work great. For the commercial world, I think it's great because someone would know exactly what they need from you. Or if you were working with a planner or somebody educated to almost be the go-between and go, well, I think you want this, go for that. But also in terms of kind of, like we were saying, kind of pricing to see where you sit in the market, because as a tactic, you could go, well, as on my a la carte thing, if you only book a ceremony for me and nothing else, my price starts at like 300 quid. Yeah. But then your dearest package, if they actually have you for a typical all day, could be somewhere nearer $3,000.
$3,000, yeah.
But if you have all prices starting from, you're going to look really affordable. But if you look at someone and go, oh wow, they're that much, you get an idea of what you're going to like. People do naturally put a price tag against the value of something, and they can probably tell by looking at it, go, that's not worth that, or actually that's really good value.
And then you'll end up with a Saturday in August booked for just a ceremony and be like, oh no. And then you get an inquiry for like the top thing with everyone just added everything on, and you're like,
or even more so, you get people's muddled up.
Yeah.
Or like, imagine if you had 3 weddings in a week, and one of them was a ceremony and speeches, one was a full day, and one was this. Like, there'd be like for me, just mentally trying to figure out where I was going, what I was doing, and what I was doing for what person. Like, I don't want to be worrying about that stuff at a wedding day. I want to be focusing on what's happening in front of me and capturing it, not going that, do I need to do this? Am I supposed to be here now?
I definitely want an easier life at that point.
And it makes it too complicated.
Make it definitely a lot easier, I think.
And it just makes it too much. So that's why I think a la carte has always got a place, but I don't think it will become kind of commonplace. I think kind of that half and half, give people a really good guide package and then have a few select add-ons to do it that way. Yeah. I think that's...
Be authoritative in your field and tell people what you think best suits your work, basically, and then add on stuff from there. Because then I think people trust you more, and and people want to be told, what are the best things.
And also, I think a very British thing as well is that people always think people are trying to get one over on them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if someone said to me, they only had like prices starting from $1,000 on their website, and I inquired for the brochure and found out the grand was actually only to get them for 2 hours on a Thursday. Yeah. And if I wanted them for all day on a Friday, it's 3. Out of principle, I'm not booking with them because they lied to me. They told me it was just $1,000.
It's gone up loads. Yeah.
And so and then again, this comes down to probably one of now we're getting to kind of those wrap up points of how you do things, how you do it, how you grow. We could do
it's like booking an EasyJet flight, isn't it? You book it for 20 quid. By the time you've added everything on, it's 200, and you're like,
exactly that. And there's still loads of people that book EasyJet flights, but there's other people that rather just like. For me, I'm just like, give me the price, give me the worst case scenario. What is it actually going to cost me, all in?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I like to be sold to. which is half the reason and most of the reason that I show my prices. And like I say, I think we could do a whole episode on showing against not showing. But I know that I know the bounce rate on my pricing page on my website is really high because it tells me in my analytics.
Yeah.
So most people or some people do come on and go, nope, too much for us, and off they go.
Yeah.
But some people don't, and some people go to the
and that's good because
page.
You don't have to field those inquiries then.
Yeah, it's like, I don't have to field them. Where I spend
yeah.
all my time doing admin, sending out pricing brochures,
yeah.
or seeing all these dates come in, and my calendar will be littered with leads that never go anywhere. So I always show mine for that reason. Again, maybe once I climb even further, or got to a point where I was working with planners, and they're saying to me, "Well, you need to really raise your prices to get these jobs." Then it becomes muddled that if you're showing one rates and you're giving others to other people, there's a reason for it. But I think for where I am at the moment, and for most people, unless you are in that real kind of top league of it, is that just a good solid package system. And whether you do that send a guide upon inquiry or have it as a page on your website, is where to be.
I think a good place to end it is knowing when to raise your prices. And this for me is a pretty quick one, is that I see too many people who have too many bookings and don't know what to do with it. And that is the time to raise your prices. Like if you're, I mean, a lot of people are in this, we're in this because we enjoy it, right? But if you're doing 60 weddings at $2,000, just raise your prices. I'd say and if you're, so my rule in general is that I want to be 2/3 booked when I enter the year.
Same, pretty much. 2/3 to 3/4 booked.
Yeah, when I enter the year.
And I know some people are less than that. Some people are half. Some people are less.
I can see some people on their Instagram stories right now, like as of this month, saying almost fully booked for 2025. And I just want to message them back saying raise prices.
Yeah. And again, but as a British person, I don't understand that, but then they'll go, who the hell are you to tell me this?
Exactly.
But I can tell you now, or we're saying, that this is our podcast, we can say what we like, is that if you are more than 1/3 to half booked for next year, when you're in the first quarter of this year, then you are too cheap.
You're too cheap, yeah.
So that is,
and that's not up to you. That's facts.
Yeah, that is facts. People have realised that you're too good to be true and are jumping on it now.
Yeah.
And if you're booking 2026 weddings, at the same money
price
that you are now, then you are bonkers.
You're fooling yourself. Yeah.
You are leaving money on the table.
And that's a confidence thing, and like we say, a British money thing. Oh, well, maybe I'm not worth that much. Like the numbers, like trust the numbers. Don't look at your films and think, am I worth that much? Look at the people that booked you and think, am I worth that much?
And again, we don't sit here and say these things. And I know that we've talked about like our price rises, and in the end of our wrap-up episode from last year, like I sat there and said that I shot 10 weddings less in 2023 than I did in 2022.
Yeah.
And my turnover was the same.
Yeah.
And for me, that was huge.
Yeah.
Like I still felt tired and burnt out and the rest of it, but I have no idea how I would have coped if I'd had to do 40 something weddings again. And I'm not saying that I want to get down. I enjoy my job. I want to be at weddings, but you can give so much more when you're only doing 30 than you are doing 40 or 50. And I also think as well is that there are so many myths with going up pricing. I am valued a lot more when I put my prices up to when I wasn't.
Yeah.
Because people have invested in you.
Yeah.
They're not going to be are we going for couple photos? Yeah, if you like. Or what?
Yeah.
You don't get that complaint.
They're going to be asking you.
People have studied you much harder to make sure that you're worth that money, or they trust you a lot more because they've put much more investment in you. One, it means you've got to deliver it, but I do find that I get questioned, scrutinised, and a lot less at the price point that I am now than I did when I was cheaper. Because
I feel like if you're somewhere around the 1800 mark, you're at the top end of like the low budget, and so people are like stretching to get to you. Whereas at the moment, we're sort of in an area like between 2.5 and 3. I'd say is an area of people have got that budget. They've set that in their mind. I'm going to pay 2.5 for a videographer or whatever, and like so. Because that's not a stupid amount of money to them, they're not, like you say, scrutinising you, being like, oh, well, what are you going to do if this happens? What are you going to do if you're real? Like, they trust you because of your authority.
But also as well, I think some of it is some of the hardest things sometimes are having problems with money and wealth. Like, don't get me wrong, we're just chucking numbers around here. Yeah. But to earn £2,500 for shooting one day of a wedding is still a lot of money.
It's mad.
Most people probably still who work conventional jobs probably bring that home around a month.
In a month.
And I know obviously we've still got to take a tax off the top of that, and we have all the costs of running our business, but we're still not sniffing for a minute that is small change at all.
Yeah.
But it is important to remember that. But it's kind of, I've lost my point now. I had a really good point and I was getting there and it's just completely gone. But do you know what I mean? It's not small change.
No.
So people are investing in you to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's me coming from a working class background with two parents working kind of conventional jobs. So that for me to even say, oh, I earned £2,500 for one day, that seems like a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so you think, well, people won't book that, it's too much. But there's people out there that come from families where their families bring in six-figure incomes between them, where they wouldn't think anything of that. Just because your direct peers and friends and stuff wouldn't book you because you're out of their budget, it doesn't mean that those people aren't out there.
You're not targeting yourself or your family, basically. And that was a big thing for me, and also coming from Debenhams, is that going from £50 a day to what we're on now, like probably like £400 or £500 a day or something of work, is insanity. And so if I'd have done that leap to £2,500 immediately after leaving Debenhams, I probably wouldn't have valued myself probably.
You'd have felt out of your depth at that point, or thought that whatever you have delivered wouldn't be worth that money.
Yeah. Well, I'm not targeting people who are still at Debenhams.
And
probably,
I know, I've had this conversation with other people where someone has said to me, oh, my best friend looked at my website and said, I can't believe you charge that for a wedding. I think that's disgusting.
Yeah.
And it's like, but your best friend's not your client.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's I know you care, and normally your friend should be a champion to what you do, but it's knowing that market that you sit in. Yeah. And
I'll get that from my mate. So I'll turn up something and they'll be like, oh, Chris can buy it with how much he charges. I've seen your website, mate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's just normal.
They'll make those kind of generalizations about those things or that. And it's like, but what's wrong than that? Like everybody had to start somewhere, and surely we all want to grow in our businesses, right? And become successul. Yeah. And I think that you are on a journey, and inflation definitely moves along, bills definitely get dearer, and the rest of it. So you've got to be keeping up. And again, I don't want to finish this podcast. We are getting towards the end now on a really sour note. But when things, this cost of living thing started coming in at the end of last year, the amount of people that had this like knight in shining armor approach of, don't worry, all your other suppliers might be putting their prices up, but I'm going to do this. And it's that was quite funny. Don't be a martyr. Yeah. Like your bills are going to go up significantly. And if you are booking weddings 18 months away for the same price that you are now, you are literally pouring your profit away. You need to market and price yourself for growth, for your experience, and all of those things.
All you're doing is devaluing yourself.
Yeah.
You put a 10% discount on once, you've devalued yourself for anyone who's ever said that you've done that. I think so. I've been so stubborn, and I've not done discounts like for years. Basically, the only time I really did it was during COVID when I was like getting I didn't even then. I was doing COVID wedding packages, not discounts.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't done discretionary discounts for some couples. Yeah. But you are talking small amounts normally. Like if someone came to me for a wedding and they said, do you know what, Tom? We're getting married at this venue on this day. Our budget is £2.5 max. Yeah. At the moment where I am at 2,700, I'm £200 dearer than them. If it was a venue that I wanted to get into and hadn't been to, or there was something going to happen at that wedding, that I really thought I need a piece of that. Yeah. Or it was towards the ends of the season, or maybe a Friday or a Sunday and not the Saturday, you can take a decision at that point and say, am I going to lose this booking for £200?
Actually, that's a good point. I did this destination and I only broke even. So technically I did do a discount.
But it opened a door to you. Yeah. So there's, again, like we said at the beginning, there is so much more to your worth than your final work. Yeah. There is also so much more to a job than what you get paid for it. Yeah. And I think most photographers would be lying to say at times they haven't cut small deals to get somewhere or get an opportunity or open a new door for them. And I think that's totally fine.
What I tend to do is leverage extras rather than give discounts. So it'd be like, if I really want this couple, I'd be like, well, okay, I'll offer you, back in the day, it was like, I'll offer you drone footage for free if you go ahead and book me, or I'll upgrade you from whatever package you choose, I'll upgrade you one, basically.
Yeah. And I think, but also at the same time, is the opposite of that is know when you're in the driving seat. Like if a couple comes to you and they are looking for a prime Saturday in June, a year away, and go, come on, mate, it's a deal to be done. It's like, you've got to stand there and go, no. Yeah. I'm sorry, but no. I know that I've booked out year on year. Yeah. That is a prime Saturday in a prime month. If you don't take it, somebody else will. Yeah. And at that point, they either turn around and go, fair enough, I'll pay it, or they'll walk away.
Amazing. I think that's a good place to end it, especially seeing as the recorders went out of battery and we just had to put new batteries in. But yeah, so I feel like it's been nice, especially having this conversation, because often I listen to podcasts with people who talk about pricing. It's often they're charging like 8 to 10K and sort of, you know, preaching how to get there. And that is a good thing because they've got there in the first place. But I feel like me and you are sort of priced in a modest sort of category in like the 2000s.
Which is aspirational enough, but still reasonable enough that we've been on this journey.
Yeah.
We've tried to be as honest as we can throughout this whole episode about our pricing journeys and where we are now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. Like, again, I'm quite open. You can go and look at my website and my pricing. I'm at the point at the moment where I'm currently charging $2,700 because I'm too scared to go to $3,000. And I think that's what we spoke about, is having that belief, isn't it? That you can get there. And maybe by the time this episode goes out, maybe I will have gone back and changed it and been brave enough to put myself up to that point, because I do believe that if someone will pay 27, they will pay 3. And maybe that's the work that I need to make myself. That's the push that I need to make myself scared again, to feel that I need to do some changes or buck up or something to make myself worth that money.
Yeah, both our prices are on our website if you want to go take a look. Like I said, I feel like having this conversation has boosted me as well to be like, okay, maybe I do need to pop them up again. But yeah.
Also, we all like money, don't we? That's what it comes down to.
Exactly,
In the day,
there's no shame in it.
And there's no shame to love your job, but want to be paid well for it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. And that kind of full circles back to where we started at the start of the episode is, yes, money might be a taboo subject in the UK, but it's not a terrible thing to want to be well paid for the reason we work in the first place. Is, And also, we've got Disney trips to pay for. Like you don't get going on holidays like that. When they charge you when you're doing 60 weddings at £1,500 because you don't have any time to go.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's a really good place to wrap it up. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the podcast, then don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching, whether it's YouTube or Spotify. And we really appreciate you listening. So we'll catch you in another couple of weeks.